There was a time when I worked day and night and no weekends, no rest, and still nothing worked out. Have you ever felt that way? It's like you're doing everything right, but life seems to be laughing at you. Every step forward and 2 steps back. And at some point you start to think, maybe I'm just not made for this. Maybe I'm not meant to win. But here's the paradox, my friend. The most important test on the road to success isn't when things get tough. It's when you lose faith in yourself, because that's the moment when you have to become your own cheerleader. No one's coming to lift you up. No one will say, you've got this. That's your job, your fight. And if you learn to support yourself when the whole world is silent, you win. So stay here, because at the end of this video, I'll give you a real practical formula on how to reignite yourself when everything inside feels burned out. But first, let's talk about why you lose your fire and how to light it forever. One day, I heard a phrase that at first made me furious, but later changed my entire life. My mentor, Earl Schaff, said, "Jim, if it's hard, it's not the end. It's just a test to see if you truly want it." And I thought, how could that be? I was already giving everything I had. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was working, I believed, and life answered me with silence. But over the years, I realized motivation isn't about inspiration. It's about inner faith that survives even when all evidence says otherwise. Let me ask you directly, what do you do when everything falls apart? When you lose a contract, when your business doesn't grow, when your dream seems so close and then vanishes? What do you do when faith disappears? Most people stop right there. They wait until the mood returns, until they feel like it again. But the problem is, motivation never returns on its own. It only comes when you move. It's not a spark, it's an engine. You see, I used to think the secret to success was finding the right moment, the right inspiration, the perfect opportunity. I waited for years. And then I realized no one is coming to rescue me. No mentor, no friend, no system. Motivation is your personal responsibility. You can't wait for the world to cheer you on. You have to learn to be the one who lights the fire within yourself. Because when the external goes silent, the internal decides whether you survive. Let me tell you a story. I was 25. I was drowning in debt, living in a tiny apartment, and there was more air than food in my refrigerator. I worked day and night, but I saw no results. And one evening, I sat alone in my room, looking out the window, and asked myself, why? Why isn't anything working? And then I realized I had been working on my business, but not on myself. I was trying to change the world, but I wasn't changing Jim Rohn. And as soon as I started, but not with big steps, but with small ones, but everything changed. Because motivation grows where you grow. And here's the main paradox. Everyone wants to feel motivated before they act, but only action creates motivation. People say, once I feel inspired, I'll start working out, studying, chasing my dream. But the truth is, inspiration comes after the first step, not before it. You move, and the road itself ignites your heart. The problem isn't that we lack energy. The problem is we wait for someone to give it to us. But my friend, no one can encourage you the way you can. And if you master this art, the art of motivating yourself when it's dark all around, you become unstoppable. So today I don't want to talk about pretty words or fleeting inspiration. No, we're going to talk about true inner strength, the kind that holds you when you fall, the one that whispers, get up. One more time, the one that creates winners. Because you see, success isn't the absence of failure. It's the ability to get back up faster than yesterday. I know this from experience. I've fallen dozens of times. I've failed in business, lost people, lost faith. But each time I got back up, I became a little wiser, a little stronger, a little calmer. And today, I want you to feel that same power inside you, because it's already there. Maybe you've just forgotten how to wake it up. Maintaining motivation doesn't mean never falling. It means learning to rise quickly. It means not letting disappointment stay longer than it should. When you lose an opportunity, don't punish yourself. Thank it for the lesson. When you fall behind your own schedule, don't give up. Start again. Because life doesn't punish us. It trains us. And those who understand that keep moving forward. So if today it feels like your fire has gone out, it's not the end. It's just a moment when you need to throw some wood into your inner furnace. And today we're going to do just that. Because at the end of this video, I'll give you a practical tool, a simple but powerful way to switch yourself back on when your energy is gone. But first, Let's deal with your main enemy of motivation, yourself. All right, let's dive deeper. The first thing that keeps motivation alive is honesty with yourself and taking responsibility for what happened yesterday. When I first heard that, it almost made me angry. What do you mean, responsibility? I'm working hard, I'm trying. But over time, I discovered an uncomfortable yet liberating truth. I was busy but not effective. I spoke beautifully but missed the client's real need. I did a lot for the business but little for myself. That's when the real transformation began. I told myself, Jim, if you lost an opportunity, it's not the end of the world, it's just the score on the board. Now watch the replay and figure out where you missed. That's how mature motivation is born. Not from applause, but from an honest review of your own mistakes. I remember the day when my best presentation at the time completely flopped. Everything as I thought was perfect. I knew the numbers, I had my stories, I even threw in a few jokes. But the response was cold. Thank you, we'll think about it, they said, and the door closed. On my way home, I was furious at the world. Then I stopped. What exactly didn't work? And it hit me. I wasn't speaking their language. I was selling what I liked, not what solved their pain. At that moment, I grabbed a pen and wrote down 3 questions I promised to answer after every meeting. What was strong? What was weak? What will I change next time? Sounds simple, but it's the simple things that save big goals. And yes, my friend, I'm hinting at something. By the end, you and I will build your own microanalysis system, a way to reignite your fire in just minutes. Let me be blunt. Don't punish yourself for mistakes. Punish yourself only for the lack of conclusions. There's a difference between I failed and I learned. The first drains energy, the second generates it. When you take responsibility, you don't condemn yourself. You take back the controls. You say, all right, now I know how not to do it. That's not weakness, that's maturity. And then something strange happens. Inner calm appears. Instead of chaos in your head, awareness. Instead of why is this happening to me, what exactly will I change? That's the moment when motivation starts to work like a generator, not like fireworks. Sometimes people tell me, Jim, but I really was prepared. Great. Now ask yourself, were you prepared for alternatives? Do you have a plan B if the client wants a different format? Can you deliver your facts and numbers without notes or slides, straight from memory? Can you rephrase your message in a minute if you see the room's eyes glazing over? Responsibility isn't just I'm at fault, it's also I'm flexible. It's the art of adapting mid-game without losing your goal. And you know what strengthens that flexibility? Daily work on yourself. I once heard a phrase I've repeated all my life. Work harder on yourself than on your job. Because when the person grows, their methods eventually outpace any plan. And here I want to bring you back to that cowboy saying, when you fall off the horse, get back on. Not tomorrow, not after the weekend, today. When I started practicing instant recovery, my failures stopped being cracks in the foundation and became steps upward. I would say aloud, okay, what exactly will I change in my next attempt? And I never gave myself more than 15 minutes to feel sorry. 15, that's it. After that, concrete action. Call 2 more clients, rewrite the intro, cut the presentation by 1/3. You'll be surprised how quickly energy returns when your body and mind get the command to act, not lament. But that's not all. There's a subtle trap many hardworking people fall into. They do the right things, but in the wrong order. They start from the outside, logos, equipment, another book on the shelf, and postpone the inner work, mindset, language, listening skills. I did that too, until I changed the order. First philosophy, then technique, then tools. When your philosophy is clear, why you do what you do, what value you bring, what standards you never betray, technique amplifies it, and tools multiply it. That's where motivation is born, that doesn't need a daily show. It lives in principles, not applause. Remember this little mental trick. Whenever you hear that inner voice saying, I screwed it all up, replace it with, I just bought a lesson. How much did it cost me? And how will I get my money's worth? That changes the game. Because if a lesson is paid for, it must be implemented. And you know what? Implementation is always action. Action is always movement. And movement always brings back motivation. That's how we close the right loop. Fact, reflection, correction, Action, new fact. No magic, just disciplined honesty. Let me speak directly to you. Have you ever woken up knowing today I'll do things differently, and by evening found yourself in the same pattern? It's not because you're weak, it's because you didn't define what differently means in 5 minutes, one call, one paragraph. Responsibility loves specifics. Tell yourself, today I'll rewrite the 3 key sentences that didn't work last time. Or, today I'll find the one number I was missing. Specific creates completion. Completion fuels belief. Belief revives motivation. And here's the final twist in this part. When you take responsibility, you can afford mercy toward yourself. Not indulgence, mercy. The understanding that you learn faster when you don't beat yourself up every time you err. I've seen people stumble right here. They analyze correctly, but then sink into days of self-criticism. Don't. 15 minutes of doubt, then back in the saddle. Because what matters isn't the last opportunity, it's the next one. The last is for the lesson, the next is for the proof. And we'll prepare for that next one together. Closer to the end, I'll give you a simple 5-minute back on the horse ritual that clears your head and restarts movement today. So let's sum up this first pillar. Motivation isn't fueled by crowds or likes. It's fueled by your ability to say, I'll take this on, I'll see what went wrong, I'll change what needs changing, and then take a step. One, small but real, because that single step, like a match in the dark, lights the next one, and the next, another. And suddenly you notice the pain of failure fades and the energy from responsibility grows. That's the engine that pulls you through cold days. Hold on to it tightly. Next, we'll rev the engine higher. We'll talk about your inner cheerleader, how to lift yourself when no one's around, and how to turn belief into a habit that runs without reminders. But first, take a deep breath. Things are about to get interesting. Now for the most important part, how to become your own cheerleader when the stands are empty and the silence rings. I didn't learn this from books. Once, after a series of failures, I was driving home late at night. My hands were empty, my head heavy, my heart like stone. I pulled over at an old gas station, stepped into the cold, and said aloud, Jim, either you learn to cheer yourself on, or your own story of failure will eat you alive. I stood there in the dark, realizing I was waiting for someone's approval, someone else's applause, and then I took my first real step. I started talking to myself the way I would talk to a friend, not with sweet words, but with honesty. You're not broken, you're in progress, get back on the horse. A strange thing happened. I felt warmth returning to my chest, not euphoria, calm. And after that, the desire to act. Tell me, how do you talk to yourself on the day you fail? That's not a small detail, and it's a strategy. The voice in your head either lifts you up or crushes you. Most people hammer themselves like with a mallet. Failed again, I'm worthless. But it should be, all right, I missed today. Great, now I know where to aim tomorrow. That's not self-deception. It's proper interpretation, because what you tell yourself becomes the fuel for your next step. I learned to replace I failed with I'm training my restart speed. That's where resilience is born, in the speed of recovery. The faster you get back into motion, the less chance doubt has to grow roots. Let me tell you a short story from my early days. I was giving a talk to an audience that didn't laugh where I expected laughter, didn't nod where there should have been that obvious aha moment. Mid-speech, an inner voice whispered, "It's over. You've lost them." And I caught it instantly. No, we haven't lost. We're changing tactics. I shifted the rhythm, asked a short question, paused for a few seconds, let the silence do the work. The room came alive. What was the key? Self-hypnosis, number. The ability not to break internally in the moment. The ability to be your own coach right on the field, not in the locker room after the game. That's the inner cheerleader in action. And what if I have no motivation at all, you might ask? Here's the paradox. Motivation is the result of movement, not its cause. So the inner cheerleader doesn't look for inspiration. It triggers small actions that awaken it. When I hit rock bottom, my return ritual started with a micro action. 1 page of reading, 1 phone call, 5 minutes rewriting a key paragraph. Seems like nothing, right? But that's how the generator starts. The body moves first, and the mind follows. Half an hour later, you're a different person. And yes, I know you want specifics. Closer to the end, I'll give you the exact sequence of these micro actions so you can switch yourself back on even on the worst day. Here's another nuance few talk about. We often depend on borrowed belief, the boss's approval, a loved one's praise, audience reaction. Useful, but dangerous. Borrowed belief is like an umbrella. It works only when it's near. True strength begins when you start creating your own weather. How? Through daily proof to yourself. Not promises, but proof. That's why I've said for years, work harder on yourself than on your job. When you give yourself small daily proofs of discipline, woke up on time, finished what you planned, kept your word, your inner faith stops shaking with the crowd's applause. It stands on its own feet. Let's refocus. Imagine two people after the same failure. One preserves the image of I'm a loser and feeds it every day with thoughts of doubt. The other looks the facts straight in the eye, adjusts, and takes action. Who regains motivation faster? The answer's obvious. But the secret isn't character, it's skill. The inner cheerleader is a skill, not a talent. It's built from three simple things: language, focus, and rhythm. How you talk to yourself, what you keep your eyes on, the loss or the correction, and the tempo of your return to action, slow regret or quick step. Here's another insight that once saved my whole year. I noticed my best and worst days are born the night before. Not in the morning, at night. If I ended the day feeling unfinished, foggy-headed, and self-critical, motivation barely flickered the next morning. But if I closed the day with a short reflection and a small win, even just washing the dishes or sending that email, I woke up already moving. Why? Because the inner cheerleader runs on fuel, completion, clarity, self-trust. We'll return to this evening ritual later. It'll be one of the keys in the practical part. Now face the mirror. When was the last time you sincerely praised yourself, not for the result, but for returning to the game? We often skip that. We think, why praise myself if I haven't achieved anything big yet? But the mind isn't an accountant. It runs on recognition energy. Praise for the direction is the fuel for endurance. Of course, without self-deception, yet praise not for excuses, but for concrete actions that move you forward. Try it today. After your first small step, pause for a second. Tell yourself, this is me in motion, and keep going. Seems minor, but it's these small things that forge steel in your spine. And one final micro turn before the next block. In moments when doubt floods over me, I always return to one image, a road in the dark. The headlights illuminate only a few dozen yards ahead, but that's enough to cross the entire country. Your motivation is those headlights. It doesn't have to light the whole road to your big dream. Its job is just to light the next 20 yards. That's it. Take that light and move a little further. One more step, one more call. And one day you'll look back and see that 20 yards by 20 yards brought you exactly where the dream stops being a dream. So now we have the second pillar. The inner cheerleader isn't shouting or showmanship. It's a quiet, relentless force you feed with daily proof and quick returns to action. Next, we'll raise the bar even higher. We'll talk about discipline as the battery that doesn't depend on the weather of emotion, and how to turn consistency into an autopilot that carries you even when feelings go silent. And at the end, as promised, I'll give you the exact 5-minute back on the horse protocol to help you restart motivation on any day in any state. Don't go anywhere. Things are about to heat up. Discipline, a plain word. No fireworks, no fanfare. Yet it's the one that powers your engine on days when emotion doesn't show up. I like to think of discipline as a battery. You charge it not with slogans, but with repeated actions. And here's what's fascinating. The battery of discipline doesn't depend on the weather of your mood. It holds its current when the sky is gray, when your bank account is empty, when the room is silent. One day I asked myself, why do some people keep going while others stall on a flat road? The answer turned out simpler than I wanted. The first group has built a rhythm that doesn't ask permission from their feelings. They wake up and do the work. And then, only later, feelings catch up. Like a loyal dog catching up with its owner. I used to wait for the right day to start. Then I realized the right day is the one you make right with the first correct step. If you need motivation to come before action, you'll never move. That's when discipline takes the wheel. It says, we're starting small, but we're starting now. 5 minutes of writing, 10 minutes of movement, 1 phone call. These small things won't impress anyone, except the one audience that matters most, you. And when your own eyes see you in motion, they start to believe you again. That belief grows, and it catches the wind of motivation like a sail filling up with air. Here's something I discovered late, but not too late. Consistency isn't born from willpower, it's born from clarity. If your day lacks clarity, it will drain your energy before noon. That's why I always keep 3 clarities on hand. What matters most today, what will be enough, and what I'll do even at my worst. What matters most is what moves your life forward, not what just fills your calendar. Enough is the line after which you can stop without guilt. Even at my worst is your insurance. When everything falls apart, you still do the minimum that keeps your rhythm alive. That's the discipline battery that doesn't shut off in a storm. Think of any long road. You don't see all 500 miles, you see the lane ahead. That's how consistency works. It doesn't require you to see the whole year, just the next 20 minutes. Before walking on stage, I often told myself, Jim, give the audience your first 5 minutes for real. The rest will come. And it did. Because when you give those first minutes with quality, your brain stops resisting. It sees we're already in motion. It's on resistance came too late. Now let's talk about another quiet force, the evening. Most people try to win the morning, forgetting that morning begins the night before. When I end my day with 3 simple acts, a short reflection, a small completion, and a clear plan for the first 20 minutes of tomorrow, I wake up already on track. Reflection clears the noise. What was good? What I'll change? A small completion gives the feeling of victory. An email sent, a workspace cleaned, clothes prepared. The plan for the first 20 minutes solves the biggest problem. Tomorrow I don't have to think, I just have to do. That's why discipline beats motivation. It removes unnecessary decisions and leaves only movement. You might say, Jim, but life is unpredictable. Exactly. That's why you need a system that survives surprises. My system runs on 2 rails, unchanging principles and flexible methods. The principle, every day I must create value and take a step in growth. The method, how exactly, depends on circumstances. If the day collapses, value can be a sincere email to a client, a meaningful call, a page of script writing, a step in growth, 3 paragraphs of reading with notes, or 5 minutes of skill practice. The principle stays firm. The method adapts. That's how discipline doesn't break. It bends around obstacles and keeps moving. There's another mirror worth looking into daily. You don't get what you want, you get what you become. When I truly accepted that, I stopped chasing results that ran away and started collecting qualities that attracted them. I cultivated punctuality, and doors opened more often. I trained clear speech, and my ideas began to be heard. I chose honesty with myself, and mistakes stopped repeating in circles. Discipline isn't a chain that binds. It's a key that unlocks the version of you that you respect. And motivation always comes where respect lives. When it feels like your energy's at 0, I come back to a simple question. Of all the things I can do right now, which one will give me back the feeling of control? Not the grandest thing, but the one that gives me back the wheel. Usually it's something tiny. Tidying the workspace, fixing one data point in a presentation, rewriting the first paragraph. These tiny steps unfreeze the mechanism. The brain gets the signal, we're back in the game. And my friend, once you feel the grip of that wheel again, the engine won't need long to start roaring. And one more thing, don't turn discipline into the enemy of joy. It's not about restriction. It's about choice. I often smile when I hear, Jim, discipline is harsh. Harsh is living without strength, without clarity, without self-respect. Discipline, on the contrary, is gentle and reliable. It's like a heartbeat. You barely notice it until it stops. But it's what keeps you alive. Let it become your background music. Let the bursts of inspiration, the applause, the big wins play over it. But the rhythm, the bass, you create yourself every day. We're arriving at the practical core. I promise to give you a simple back on the horse protocol. 5 minutes to reboot your system, even on the grayest morning or after the hardest defeat. We'll do that in just a moment. But before you hit the gas, pause for 1 second and say aloud, I don't wait for mood. I create rhythm. I don't ask for permission. I take responsibility. Feel the weight of those words. They're not about magic. They're about you, the adult, hands on the wheel, eyes on the next 20 yards of road. Ready? Then let's move on to the concrete steps that will make all this not just a powerful speech, but your daily practice. So let's talk seriously, my friend, not about the world, not about circumstances, about you. Because right now, the only thing that truly matters is your honesty with yourself. I want you not just to listen, but to feel. And as we go, I want you to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. 1, if you've completely lost touch with that point. 10, if you live it every day. Don't pause the video, don't overthink it. Just answer as you go, intuitively. And maybe along the way, you'll feel something inside begin to shift. First question, how quickly do you bounce back after failure? On a scale from 1 to 10, think about your last setback. How much time did you spend on regret, excuses, analysis, or sorrow? A day, a week, a month? Remember, it's not the failure that stops you. It's the pause that follows it. A true champion doesn't fall less. They just get up faster. So if your score right now is a 3, don't beat yourself up. Just know this, you can learn to recover faster. It's trainable. It's a muscle. Second question, how often do you encourage yourself as sincerely as you encourage others? 1, almost never. 10, every day. Most people can find kind words for everyone, except themselves. But your inner voice is the microphone through which life hears your intentions. If every day you tell yourself, I can't, I'm tired, I've messed up again, the world simply mirrors that frequency back to you. So tell me honestly, does your voice lift you up or tear you down? Because without inner support, even the best plan will collapse in the first wind. Third question, how stable is your discipline when no one's watching? From 1 to 10, when the audience is gone, when no one's expecting results, when it's easy to skip just one day, do you still show up? You see, real strength isn't in grand promises, it's in the quiet little steps no one notices, but they're the ones that change everything. Because as I've always said, discipline is the bridge between intention and achievement. If you keep going, even when the world is silent, you've already won. Fourth question, how sincerely grateful are you for your journey, even for its hardest chapters? 1, I'm still angry about what happened. 10, I'm thankful for every scar. This one matters, because as long as you're at war with your past, you can't build your future. Gratitude doesn't mean agreeing with the pain. It means acknowledging that the pain taught you something. When you're grateful even for your failures, they stop biting you and start training you. Gratitude breeds calm. Calm brings clarity. And clarity, my friend, is the true fuel of motivation. Fifth question, how clearly do you see the person you want to become in 5 years? From 1 to 10. Most people don't lose motivation, they just lose sight of who they're doing it for. You can't charge a battery if you don't know what device it powers. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. What do you see? What language do you speak? How do you carry yourself? Would the you from today even recognize that reflection? That's your reason to get up tomorrow. Not money, not status. You, the better you. Because, as I once said, success isn't something you chase. It's something you attract by becoming the person who deserves it. Now take a pause. Look at those 5 scores. This isn't judgment. This isn't a test. It's a mirror. Each number shows where your strength is still sleeping. Maybe somewhere you've got a 3, somewhere a 7, somewhere a 9. Doesn't matter. What matters is now you see where to move. And when this video ends, I want you to return to these questions once more, calmly, without pressure. Write down your answers. Look at them as a map. Because believe me, change doesn't start when you applaud someone in a video. It starts the moment you answer yourself honestly. And here's what I want you to do now. Don't just like this video. Don't just subscribe. Though, of course, do that if these words resonated with you. I want you to write one phrase in the comments, I'm getting back on the horse. No explanations, no reasoning, just that. Because sometimes motivation begins with 3 words you say out loud. Those words are your declaration. And when you write them, you've already taken the first step. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be honest. You're not required to win every day. You're required to rise after every night. You are your own coach, your own cheerleader, your own engine, and I promise you, if you learn to cheer for yourself, the world will one day sing along to your song. You know, my friend, I've learned one simple thing. Life doesn't reward the fastest or the smartest. It rewards those who don't stop. Not because they're fearless, but because they keep going despite the fear. Motivation isn't a gift, it's a habit. It's the daily decision to get up when you're lazy, to return when you're ashamed, and to believe when no one's clapping. I've seen many people who had everything except inner faith. And I've seen those who had nothing except the decision not to give up. And it's those people who change the world. Remember, falling doesn't make you weak. It only shows how high you dared to climb. And if today you're on the ground, that's not a sign of the end. It's a reminder you're still in the game. Stand up, breathe in, get back on the horse. Because in the end, all great things begin with a simple gesture. And when a person says to themselves, one more day, one more try, one more reason not to quit. And if you remember just one thing from this video, let it be this. No one can ignite you stronger than you can. So guard your fire. Feed it with knowledge, gratitude, and discipline. And when someone asks where you get your motivation, smile and say, I create it myself.